Hi. So, for those of you who have joined me in my invitation to practice solitude, we have now reached week 5. It's crazy to believe that it is already week 5. It's crazy to believe that we have been in this place of quarantine and shelter in place for as long as we have. But I hope that you are all doing well and that this video finds you well in your home or in whatever space you are residing in at the moment. And so, here in week 5, I want to invite us into the practice of grief. I think that it's fair to say that this time has brought a lot of emotions into our life that we did not anticipate, we did not plan for. It's brought a lot of loss into our lives, a lot of rescheduling and reattending, and just a lot of slowness into our life that maybe you haven't experienced in other seasons of your life before. And we can, of course, bypass that and just move on and bulldoze right through all of that and jump over the emotions part and go and do and act as if everything's okay. But eventually, grief is going to catch you in your path, and you're going to have to take a few steps backward and learn to process that grief, learn to go through the emotions of loss that you are experiencing. And we all do that in our different ways. I do that through journaling, and I've tried to, on a daily basis, to really think through my day and really journal through the emotions of every situation that I felt during that day, to really come to understand my emotions, come to understand how I process that and how I can reorient it for the next day and the coming days. Even try to do an end of the week check-in with my emotions to just really figure out, what was I feeling? What kind of attitudes and reactions and conversations did I have in the week, and how did that affect my personality, or how did that affect my other relationships? So that might be something that you need to do. It might be about journaling, and it might be about doing it in a different way. We all have the ways that we cope with how we're feeling, and just want to encourage us to embrace that in these moments. Like, it's really hard to embrace this season, but we have got to let ourselves stand still and take pause and just really come to a place to just stop for a little bit. And so part of this stopping comes with the practice of solitude and just letting our emotions flow at the feet of Jesus in his presence. And so I want to invite us into that. I think that this is a process that is important to us because, believe it or not, grief comes into our lives a time or two. It comes in our lives multiple times, and we learn how to process it and then move on from it. But it's always there. It's always a part of our lives, and it will come in waves. There might be a coming wave once we go back to normal life, whatever normal is going to look like for us. We're going to have a process of emotions that are completely new to us, that we're going to have to spend some time with the Lord to process, and spend some time to the Lord of just laying it before him, and whatever that might look like for us. So I wanted to give us a small practice to go through this week with that. Because you see, the Lord, he is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those whose spirit is crushed. And so he is present with us in our grief, and he bears that grief and walks with us through it. And so you're not alone in any of these emotions that you are feeling, but you have the very one, God, our Father, who is present with us through it all. And so this week, I want us to go through Psalm 62, 1 through 2. And so this is what it says. It says that, "For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly shaken." I want you to read through this psalm, focus on it, meditate on it, and that very first verse is what we're going to turn into our prayer as you enter into your practice of solitude for the week. So here's the prayer. It's, "In silence, my soul waits for you alone, O God. From you alone comes my salvation." So repeat this psalm, this verse, this prayer a couple of times before you enter into solitude. And just remember those words. And as you find yourself being distracted, or as you find yourself not really knowing what you're seeking in the stillness, or as you're seeking those questions of grief, this is just a psalm that you can come back to during that time. And so as you dwell here, I want you to think about some questions. What is hurting these days? What grief are you holding in? Do you have feelings of disappointment, feelings of loss, feelings of anger? What are those emotions that you have held in, not really expressed? And I want you to speak those out loud. No matter how raw it feels, just speak all of the emotions and all of the questions that you have been holding on about grief and hurt, disappointment and discouragement, and just speak those out loud in the presence of the Lord. He wants to hear them. He wants to bear your grief with you. He wants to walk in all of that with you. And so I just want you to remember that you are not alone, but you are in the presence of the one, the Father who walks with you and bears this grief with you. So I'm going to post both the psalm in the email as well as this prayer that you can implement in your psalm. So wherever you're at with your physical time that you have allotted for yourself, you can continue that or you can increase it. I would encourage you maybe not to increase your time more than 15 minutes total. So from 7 minutes to 15 minutes, whatever you have allotted that time for, set your timer. And I want you to quiet yourself by inhaling and exhaling a couple of times, and then use this prayer. Read through this prayer that I just gave you that is based off of Psalm 62:1. And then begin to dwell there, asking those questions of grief, expressing publicly to the Lord in His presence all of those moments of grief that you've been feeling, or that you're just feeling in that specific moment that you choose to spend with the Lord. I also want to encourage you that maybe during that time, as you're speaking it out loud, also write it out in a journal or a notebook that you've been using during this time. Or you can journal after the time has been finished. I just think it's really important to write those things down. So as long as you feel comfortable, write those things out in somewhere that you can go back to, because I think it's really important to write down the things that we're praying for and the ways that God has been faithful to us, or the ways that we have just been grieving, and then going back and seeing how the Lord was present with us in those moments and the ways that He was faithful. It's good to recall His faithfulness in all areas of our lives and in all seasons, because we may not have a particular pandemic season quite like this one again, but you will definitely have a season of darkness, a storm in your life where you'll need to recall when God was faithful to you last. And I think that these moments of lamenting to the Lord and having those written laments down is really important for us to just see God was faithful, God was good, and He's going to be good to me in this next season as well. So I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope that you enjoy this practice, and we'll see you next week for week 6.